What is going on, everyone? Long time no see, at least live. It's been a few weeks, and I'm very much excited to be hanging out with you guys. It'll be a little bit rusty since we've been away from the live for a couple of weeks, but we are in November now. A lot has transpired, but all of a sudden, week 10, we got some weather today, and yeah, a whole lot of fun stuff. What is up, Steyer? Good morning to you. Dustin saying, "How about them Cardinals? How about them Aggies, though?" After another dominant win could and Indiana struggling against Penn State, they could be all the way up at number 2 with this upcoming ranking that comes out on Tuesday. So shout out to you guys. Emery, what is up with you? Let's y'all ready to make some lines today? Get some water, wet my whistle. Let me go ahead and share my screen so you can stop staring at my white wall. All right. As always, we're gonna kick it off with the I guess the early only slate. 10 gamer today overall. We'll get into the main in a little bit, but start off with the early only. Some weather. Wanted to get through that before we get because the whole country is going through some cold fronts and all that stuff. So there's actually some weather to monitor, not in terms of just monsoon or pouring rain like we saw a couple weeks ago with Miami and Cleveland, but it could affect some deep balls, deep games, and um, most notably one that kind of is a bummer because I was looking forward to stacking this game. The Giants and the Bears actually is the worst of the bunch in terms of wind. Could have up to 30-mile-an-hour gusts today. Possible sleet, snow, rain combo before the game could make the field a little bit slick. So that is worth noting. So deep balls going to be tough, and on top of that, DeAndre Swift was going to play, and then he DNP'd on Friday due to personal reasons. And I thought, okay, we're going to lock and load with Common Unguy second straight week. And then now DeAndre Swift is playing. It's a great matchup. I think the ownership is going to be very much diluted on both because of Manunga's success, but both of them could pay off today. It's not like they're crazy, crazy expensive. So, yeah, very interesting route in terms of that game. And on top of that, Wandale is pulling a lot of ownership as a mid-price receiver, which I'm kind of. It feels like he's only gone off when it hasn't been a chalky for him. But moving on, you got Buffalo, Miami. There's a legit chance of a downpour. Can't really pinpoint when it's coming, if it'll happen throughout the game, but there's a good chance that it'll happen at some point. That's already a tough game to predict because we don't know how close it'll be, how far it'll be. We saw Buffalo let them hang around on a Thursday night game a couple months back. Yet Josh Allen did fine, didn't do anything crazy in terms of his price tag. I think he had about 23 fantasy points. So, um, and on top of that, Waddle is now wide receiver 1 without Tyreek Hill in the fold, at least in this matchup. So you can stack that game. It's already frustrating in fair weather, especially the Buffalo side. But um, yeah, tough one to get to. I know HN will pull a ton of ownership as well, and I know Dusty's going to want me to build some HN at some point. So that's worth noting. New Orleans, Carolina, bunch of windy conditions. So about 15 to 25-mile-an-hour wind today. Could downgrade long kicks and deep passing, but otherwise it's kind of the same how we were going to treat that game. We were going to avoid it other than Rico Dowdle is basically the approach how most people will attack it today. Probably going to feel the same way on my end as well. Another game, the Patriots and Bucks. That was a sneaky fun game because I thought the ownership would be lower on a lot of areas. Scattered downpour, kind of similar to what we have in the Miami game. You don't know if and how long it'll be there, but it could go there and it could affect passing. And once again, similar to Buffalo, New England's been frustrating to stack, but at least Drake May is a couple hundred cheaper. You also have Ramondre out for another week, so Travion Henderson had 75% snap share last week, and Bucks off a bye. Godwin's still out. Evans still out. Mecca Buka had another week of healing. He hasn't missed any time due to his hamstring, but time always helps with those specific injuries. So his price point being very reasonable to get into. And then tomorrow night, at least, the Philly Green Bay Monday night game. Apparently, it's going to be below freezing. So, our first below freezing game of the year and possible snow flurry, which it feels a little early to already be getting into snow flurries, but I am all for that in all kinds of games. So, anywho, anyhow, yeah, decent amount of weather today, but nothing crazy that we just completely avoid. It's going to be a 7-0 kind of game, I would think, but it's just worth noting, especially when you're thinking about those stacks. And on top of that, we have another Thursday, not Thursday, a Sunday morning game going on between the Colts and the Falcons. That one, tale of two of the best running backs in football, and it looks like pick six or Indiana touchdown. Sorry, I thought that said INT. But yeah, in Emery, appreciate you keeping me up to date on that one. So it looks like 13-7 Indy so far in that game. Steiger Thanksgiving fixing to be a banger. Yeah, I'm really excited for that three gamer. I'm gonna pull up the. I don't want to botch any matchups, but um, in terms of that contest, that's gonna be a three gamer, and we normally do pretty well on these Thanksgiving slates. But Green Bay Detroit's gonna be an awesome 12 o'clock game, and then you got Dallas and Kansas City, which Kansas City you think would roll, but very stackable game. And then lastly, it's going to be Cincinnati Baltimore. You think that it's a little early for Joe to come back. I haven't heard a single thing, but they said early December is optimistic, and that's the week before early December. So you never know, but both of those teams could be rolling. At least both of them offensively are looking a lot better than they were. So very big game for those. So I'm really excited for that slate for sure. All right. Yeah, pay the rake. I'm very much looking forward to that. But anywho, anyhow, let's get into this early only slate. It is a seven gamer. I lied. There's one game that is scrolled to the right. Quarterback wise, it's kind of just paying up at the top. Is kind of how it feels. Most of the cheap quarterbacks are really on the later slate in terms of who I consider strong values today. I mean, you do have starting quarterbacks like Tyler Show, Dylan Gabriel, Davis Mills are mid 4K. If you want to get behind that, I probably would side with Davis Mills the most. He didn't really do a ton last week, but the biggest thing that mattered to me is that he peppered Nico Collins with targets, and that's what I've been wanting to see. That's why we drafted him so much at the 1-2 turn in best ball season, because we just thought this was going to be one of the highest target shares of the season. It hasn't really turned out that way. He's been a good touchdown threat, but he just hasn't had the extreme boom with CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud was coming into his own, had a good, pretty like 3 out of 4 game stretch, and he started out pretty strong against Denver, who's a pretty tough defense. Got knocked out due to a concussion. Should be back next week, but at least this single game sample size against Jacksonville, we targeted Nico back in, I think it was week 3, because he just absolutely kills Jacksonville every time he plays them. CJ Stroud did not go off, but Nico Collins went over 100, almost scored a touchdown. Oh, I'm sorry, he did score a touchdown. He almost scored 30 fantasy points. Ended up fumbling, but got there based on his price point. And now I think it is a season low in terms of his price. Yeah, 60. He hasn't been in the 6K range other than the Baltimore game. And but yeah, his season best, as you can see, 26.4 was his best of the season so far, and hopefully he repeats that effort with his backup quarterback, who he has played with before. Going to the top, though, I think this is kind of a slate where I really want to just say it's one of these 4 up top. Wish I would say it would be Caleb, but he's already been kind of struggling anyways. And last week he really got there because of a receiving touchdown and his rushing upside, and then a fluky, whatever you want to call it, game-winning touchdown against Cole Kmet, or with not Cole Kmet, Colston Loveland, his rookie tight end. So yeah, he got there based on value, but bad weather game. The last couple of bad weather games um, he got there with a rushing touchdown with negative yards. It's not as appealing as it was at the start of the weeks. Jackson Dart, at least, is pretty much a lock to, at this point, score a rushing touchdown or have a 10-point floor from a rushing perspective. 5 of the last 6 games with a rushing touchdown. Isn't providing a ton in the passing game, less than 205 passing yards in most of them, other than that crazy Denver game. So I really kind of think it's who do we want up top? And do you guys have a preference? Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Drake May, Baker Mayfield. I mean, I don't think you can go really wrong with any of them. And it really only feels like Baker is the only one where you have a pretty self explanatory way of how you're going to be stacking him. If and when you go that route, a lot of the others are going to be wishful thinking. With Drake May, is it Booty week? Is it Stephon Diggs week? Is it Hunter Henry week? Or is it just going to be the run game? Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews scored 2 touchdowns in his first game. That was his only catches of the game. Isaiah Likely did really well as a $2,600, at least on the main, on a main slate. The Thursday Monday contest, he was 2,600, 9 fantasy points. That was third among the tight ends on the team. Josh Allen, I mean, Kincaid's been the most consistent. I don't really think I'm getting there on the main slate because I really like the value of the dominant tight ends today. But Dalton Kincaid, at least the last time he did play Miami, 17 fantasy points, touchdown. He's had 4 touchdowns this year. I'm glad that he's finally a red zone threat because he really wasn't that much in the first couple of seasons as a Bill. But um, other than that, it's Khalil Shakir, who basically only gets his 6 to 7 targets and rarely scores touchdowns. He did a couple weeks ago. He did late against Miami the last time, but that was very late in the game and he wasn't paying off before that. Zay Flowers, maybe. Oh, that's Diggs. With Lamar Jackson, could be. He is one of our not, I wouldn't say friends of the show, maybe one day, but Chris Pinnell, a guy that me and Emery have been following for a couple of years, starting in NASCAR, but he's been doing a lot of content with NFL and MLB as well. And he has Zay Flowers as one of his highest leverage plays of the entire slate today. So, with that said, sub 6K, not terrible for somebody that has the opportunity to be in an offense that could score 30 plus points today. So, we'll just kind of see what goes about that. Apparently, there was a crazy punt. Dallas offense with Houston defense. What a dream that would be. Yeah, that would be ideal, man. That would solve all the sadness that Texas football fans have endured the last 20 plus years with both teams just feel like they're a piece away or just not complete in some way, like they're great in some areas but awful in others. Been a common theme for Cowboys and Texans fans in the last few several years at least. And then punts make football real. Yeah, that's who was it? I watched a game the other day. There was like a 6'6", 290-pound punter, and he booted like a 70-yarder. I don't know who it was. Don't remember the game, but that was pretty fun. Anyway, so like I said, I think it's kind of spinning up top. It's not like anything in the 5K range really stands out to me. The Bryce Young not really doing much at all other than a couple games this year where he has 3 passing touchdowns. And I'm not going to rely on him to throw 3 passing touchdowns. Um, so if you can say the weather's not going to be as bad, maybe it is these guys. But the whole premise of it is just I think it's the guys up top is really where you want to go today. Running back wise, Devon Achane is probably going to be the chalk of all chalk on the early only slate, at least. Should be one of the higher owned players on the slate overall today. Yeah, on RotoWire, at least on the early only, he is by far the highest owned skill player by about 10%. And that's with a chalky Rico Dowdle in a even, I wouldn't say even better matchup, but as good, if not a better matchup. We'll see if we can squeeze him in. James Cook, similar ordeal. Miami, we thought about targeting running backs to all season long. They've had a couple of consecutive games when they've done well. But last time he played Miami, they were playing from ahead the whole game. You would anticipate that being the same thing today. Over 100 yards, a touchdown. Pretty solid, 23.4. 75 is not a crazy price. And if we are just talking about specific this guy versus that guy, James Cook has about half the ownership of Devon Achane. Devon Achane, he's done well. His consistent 16 to 20 every week, other than like the Cleveland game, which you can throw that out the window because it was bad weather and a blowout. But he doesn't have enough as he hasn't had nearly as much boom as James Cook has had. James Cook has been over 100 yards 5 times this year, 7 touchdowns on the year on the ground. I know Achan has a lot through the receiving game, but it's not like he's hitting the 100-yard bonus nearly as much as we would like to see. So if James Cook is going to be half the ownership or about 60% of what Achan's ownership is going to pull, I would probably side with the same game, but going James Cook. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Going down, Quinshon Judkins without the Jets, getting rid of the number one interior run stopper this year in Quentin Williams. He was traded to the Dallas Cowboys this past trade deadline. And then their best corner also, Sauce Gardner, who M mentioned in the chat, feeling weird being a Colt right now. I don't think that affects the run game, but either way, they're punting on the season at this point. Two best defensive players that they just traded away. So Quinshon Judkins, who is going to be on the road, not so great weather. I think I mentioned that game being okay. Well, I guess it kind of upgraded to where people thought it would be. So more dry than wet. See some sprinkles or shower, but most of it stays light. So it's not like it was as bad as it looked early in the week. But either way, it's a low total. It is a true sickle game. Um, from this perspective, it could very well be a 10-3 kind of game. And if that's the case, and Quinchon's just going to get the opportunities he did in the last bad weather game um, against Miami, where he had 25 carries for 84 and 3 touchdowns. And honestly, that was a little light because they kind of held him back towards the end of the game because they were ahead by so much. He's very solid. Rico Dowdle, I think, is going to go in every early only and most of my mains today. Um, they were not lying when they said, no, he's the starter now. So his first game as a true quote unquote starter based on coach speak, 25 carries, 28 total opportunities, 141 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the road against Green Bay. So he's 6,300. I don't understand why Tyrone Tracy had a larger price increase after a bad game than Rico Dowdle did, which Rico Dowdle, much better matchup. Obviously, not sharing the workload anymore with Chuba Hubbard. Chuba only got 6 opportunities in the same game, so it's not like the first game. Oh, they both went off, so this could be just a hot hand approach. No, he just outplayed him, and he's just been great. And I just did not see this coming. After last year, Dallas, I think the last 4 games of the fantasy season had 100 yards. And we were like, well, now you're going to an offense with Chuba Hubbard, who just got extended. They just drafted another running back. You're a 1-year deal anyway. How is that really going to work? And it's proven me so wrong. So feel awful about the lack of ownership I have in best ball of him. But in terms of ownership today, I'm going to be all over Rico. So I'm just going to do that. And then we'll talk a little bit more about these running backs. So yeah, Dusty. The Gabe Nwosu for Penn State 6'6", 297. That was the punter I was thinking about. I was like, good God, you better be able to punt it 60, 70 yards. But yeah, like I mentioned, Tyrone Tracy, he did not have much of a load last week in a solid matchup. His price increased by 700. He was out snapped. He was out touched. He had less impact on his opportunities. And maybe that was just game script dependent. Whoops, wrong. Against the 49ers, but it's not like it was that far out of reach where they were just giving the load to Devin Singletary. But Singletary, pretty solid, 5 yards a touch, 10 opportunities, 50 yards, and he's 1,500 cheaper. So I don't understand what that is. Maybe that's like the exact reason why he's a great play, because nobody's going to be on him. He looks like he's about 6% owned on the main slate, and there's a couple even greater people in that price point on the 3 o'clock slate that could even make it sub 3%. And then all of a sudden he has 100 yards in a game against Chicago. And then it's just like, yeah, you should have just, zagged while everybody zigged kind of thing. Common Young guy wanted to play a lot of him today. But with DeAndre Swift, I don't mind if you go to either one. It looks like both of them are going to have, I mean, they're combining for about 15% ownership today, at least on the main slate. So nobody really wants to play this situation because of the fact that you don't really know how this workload's going to have, because DeAndre Swift's first game sample without I'm sorry, DeAndre Swift's first game out of the lineup and Kyle Nunga goes for 180 total yards. You would think that that's kind of a Rico Dowdle-esque situation with Chuba, where he gets more opportunity and then maybe he does enough to where he just takes him out, kind of thing. Trying to pull up the total ownership on the main slate today, what Chris has. It looks like he has them combined for about 9% owned. And it's the second best matchup based on people against running backs this year. It's not a crazy price point. And if you do play a lot of lines, it's so easy to get over both. And DeAndre Swift, he wasn't a game time decision or still have that Q tag because of a groin injury, because he was practicing on Wednesday and Thursday and he was good to go. And he missed Friday because of personal reasons. So Ben Johnson at least said on his report they may take a hot hand approach going forward. We always thought Swift was okay, but he was never a great running back. So if Kyle guy is just making the most of his opportunity, as you see, I undersold it. He had 198 yards last week. So if he continues to just play well, then he could be the guy going forward. But if he is less than 2% owned today in a great matchup, I might want to play one line just to see what happens. I mean, he's the same price as Travion Henderson. I like Travion Henderson, but it's hard to defend him when he has been graded. He was graded before last week dead last among qualified running backs via PFF. But now Ramondre Stevenson is out of the fold. It's not like there's any kind of way where you can't really be optimistic about the matchup. He did outsnap, what was his name? Kevin Jennings, 3-1 last week. Kevin Jennings actually scored the touchdown. But at the same time, let me look him up. Terrell Jennings, I apologize. But yeah, he had 12 opportunities himself, was kind of inefficient, but he did score the touchdown. But either way, he only had about 25% of the snaps. Travion had about 75. So that was a welcoming sight. And 20 opportunities was the best on the season. And you kind of want to see that going forward. So 5,600, don't mind him. But if the ownership is high, let me see what the ownership looks like on Travion. At least it's not crazy, about 10%. If it got more inflated because of that, I might just be like, hey, Kyle's matchup's just as good. He's also in a high hand approach situation as well. So I don't know. It's worth a sprinkle. And going down here, I don't see a ton that really piques my interest. I was going to say I didn't expect, or it's not that I didn't expect, but I was unsure about Quinshon Judkins' status, and if it was going to be the case, I was going to be all over Dylan Sampson today because of his PPR upside and Cleveland just not being able to throw it down the field to wide receivers with Dylan Gabriel. But now that he's healthy, this 4K range is pretty disgusting. I don't know if there's a single 4K player. Yeah, there's not a single 4K player other than Devin Singletary projected more than 8 fantasy points. So it's a stay away. Definitely, especially on a PPR site when you can try to find, fall into a 4 for 60 from one of these cheap receivers. So basically, running back is you're spending up twice. 5,600 and up is probably the way to go on the early only slate. But Rico Dowdle, at least on all early only lines, are probably going to be in my line, and just figure out who else you want to have. Receiver wise, it's Justin Jefferson up top, and then pretty much value from there. Not a ton of huge names. Garrett Wilson, not officially active, but he's expected to play. But it's not an insanely great matchup. And on top of that, it's also Justin Fields throwing him the ball. So I don't really know. Rome Odunze, after a 47-point outing, having 0 catches, very disappointing. I was going to be way over the field to him. but it's kind of a weird that he wasn't falling in my lines because I just went away from stacking this game. But he's not crazy owned, about 5%. So again, very easy to get overweight too if you just wanted to have a sprinkle of them. Giants have just been bad overall, stopping opposing offenses this year. So maybe it's the Rome show again. I'm going to start him in my fantasy lineups because I kind of have to at this point with a lot of people on bye. But I don't think you have to go that route in terms of receiver. I mentioned Nico Collins earlier. Emeka Ibuka, couple games of duds this 3-game stretch. He left the game due to a hamstring injury on this San Francisco game. Didn't play in the second half, and then the 7th and 8th weeks of the season did not miss any time. But 12 targets in a what I would consider Baker's worst game of the year so far, and then the targets had been there. It just was not hitting the end zone, was not being productive. But that bye, I think, was much needed for this offense that was kind of sputtering for a couple weeks of a stretch. So 7,000. We just saw Drake London go for 40 last week on the Patriots. So it's not like it's not a great matchup. Justin Jefferson, love him as a player. I'm just fearful of the ceiling at this point due to this price. With JJ McCarthy, his first game back, he upset win in Detroit. Did catch a touchdown, but he had to get the touchdown just to get to 16.7. If you're spending 7,900 and you're getting 16 fantasy points, it's not a good day for you, probably, and more likely than not. So I know that opponent rank says 29th, but it also is a skewed sample because Baltimore was awful for a month uh, against everything. But now they're starting to get healthy. Couple week stretch. I'm gonna just pull up Zay Flowers just so you can kind of see some samples. Only allowed in 17 points against a high flying Rams team before the bye, and then coming out of the bye against capable offenses, allowing just 22 total points. I know they did allow Miami to move the ball up and down, and Miami just kind of dolphined their way into a blowout loss. But it's not like this is just a easy shootout, great matchup. So I could see Minnesota hanging around, but at the same time, I don't know if they're just capable of just being a shootout worthy team. So Justin Jefferson's going to be really hard to get to for me. I think if I'm spending up, these two make a lot of sense in Mecca Buka and Nico Collins. Jalen Waddle as a bring back on Buffalo side of things, just very steady and consistent as a wide receiver one without Tyreek Hill. There's been one true dud, and it was the same dud I told you to cross out for Devon Achane against Cleveland, where he had one catch, bad weather, and two, it was just terrible. So very reasonable. Olave, now that he doesn't have Shaheed, sure, but also JC Horn has been awesome this year. So yeah, Steiger. I was also surprised that Jalen wasn't traded at the deadline. But the thing is, I think they not overvalued, but they were a little too stubborn on their value of him, and it's not like they can't trade him in the offseason either. So maybe his value goes up a little bit more if he has a really strong end to the season. Say that he stacks a couple of 100-yard games and finishes the season with 1,000+ yards, 8 to 10 touchdowns. That could make somebody willing to throw a late first round pick for Miami to go that way, and then they just completely bottom out, do a rebuild and all that stuff. So yeah, they're not going anywhere. But at the same time, I think their price point was a little too high. I think they wanted like a first and a day two pick for him, if I remember correctly. So that's definitely way overvalued. But at the same time, teams can be desperate and stupid in the offseason as well. So I would not take his name off the trade market. It just may be a little bit delayed for 3-4 months. Like I said, Olave without Shaheed, it's not a great matchup, but he's been getting a ton of opportunities. Last week was his first opportunity or first game of the year where he had less than 6 targets. But he's been steady, consistent. But his price is a season high against not a great matchup. So I'm not really interested. Zay Flowers, like I mentioned earlier, showing pretty good leverage today. And then there's a plethora of wide receiver twos or unknown floor ceiling combos. Stephon Diggs caught some touchdowns these past couple weeks, but hasn't gotten a ton of targets really since his big Buffalo Sunday night game. So $5,800 does seem a little pricey for me, but all these guys are going to stay low owned. DJ Moore, first big game of the year, had a passing touchdown, had a rushing touchdown, and then caught 4 for 72. So 23 fantasy points. Price did increase a little bit. If there is bad weather game, maybe that does increase his opportunities around the line of scrimmage a little more. So he's in the pool. But again, we've seen his floor be 6 to 8 fantasy points. So it's fine. It's fine. Jordan Addison, same thing. Floor is a little lower now, I think, with JJ McCarthy in the fold. But if you like Justin Jefferson and you're not against me, 2,500 less for a pretty solid wide receiver too, I think is fine. Wandale Robinson pulling a lot of ownership. A lot of people are going to see that 30th and just go to his name. I think right now, in terms of ownership, he is the fifth highest owned receiver right now, showing good leverage according to Chris. But I don't know. I don't know, man. He's been fine. He's kind of gone back and forth between not many targets and a bunch of targets in recent weeks, but only twice in the last like 7 weeks has he gone for over 50 yards. So opportunities there, matchups there, it's just okay to me. One interesting thing is Travis Hunter, obviously right before last week in practice, hurt his knee, so he is on IR. Brian Thomas Jr. sprained his ankle in another positive matchup. He's just been bad. I think he dropped another 30 plus yarder. Has had a lot of drops, but they are holding him out this week because of injury. It's not a good matchup, but it is the debut of Jacoby Myers as a Jag, and it's not. It doesn't get much better when the starting tight end, the wide receiver one, and the wide receiver two are all not available. You got to throw it to somebody, and it could just be Jacoby Myers, who has always been a solid floor play. He has not scored a touchdown this year, but he also has been playing with Geno Smith, who has been very inconsistent as a quarterback. That doesn't mean Trevor can't be as well, but Trevor, at least a lot of his issues has been drops. The Jags by far lead the league in drops right now. So maybe Jacoby helps with that. Parker Washington, we were on the right side of that last week. 19 targets over the last 2 weeks. I think people are going to be scared to play him at 47, but because of the fact that Jacoby's there now, his price went up 1,000. I think everybody's going to hate wanting to get this direction, and they combined sub 5K for both of them, but they're combined showing less than 7% owned today. And so I think one of them can have a really solid day. I'm not calling out, they could have tournament winning upside because it is, again, a tough matchup. But I see pass for both of these guys, and neither are pulling ownership. So you have that going for him. And then going down receiver wise, let's see. You got a bunch of guys down here, wide receiver twos and threes, that are projected right around 8 to 10. And I could just, oh yeah, Malik could go off. He's on the field a lot. Darius Slayton, back to back weeks where he had a touchdown that was either dropped, knocked out of his hands, or called back. So 4,300, his price hasn't changed at all. And if people are going to be way over the field on Wandale, Darius Slayton has similar upside, and he's 1,000 cheaper. And then receivers down low, at least Luther Burden is back. But at the same time, Zacchaeus, his one game without Luther Burden, had his best game of the year with 17 fantasy points. So I don't really love that. I don't think there's anything below 4K that really stands out. I know Demario Douglas had a big game this past week, 4 for 100 and a score. And Booty, I think I did mention earlier, like, don't know if it's Booty. He's actually out. I forgot they confirmed him out yes, or 2 days ago. So I think he's pretty solid. $4,000. Ownership wise, not crazy owned, about 6.5%. So he's good. Xavier Legette, not really. Changed my mind. Tedero McMillan did pop up late on the injury report with the hammy injury. He will play, but it's just worth mentioning that. And then down low, if you want to go all the way down, I did mention AD Mitchell being traded to the Jets. Again, it's not the craziest great matchup. I don't know how instantly he'll be impactful, but apparently Glenn was non-committal about if he'll be available. So I don't like hearing that when they truly need receiver help because Garrett Wilson's banged up. All they have is Mason Taylor, Brees Hall in terms of skill players. So how are you non-committal about him playing? So if that's the case, I'm probably gonna stay off him. He's not projecting well. But yeah, let's build a line. Uh, Emery said before I do that though, catching up on a couple of comments. Rico Dowdle had 498 yards on 106 attempts his final year at South Carolina. He's had that in 4 games. Yeah, he's on a hell of a run right now, and it makes you do some reevaluating because running back is very much a volume based opportunity in fantasy. I know James Conner, me and him have been on the same page of just we've always thought he's been a below average running back that just gets way above average volume. And it's just whether or not he stays healthy. Last year he stayed healthy. This year he did not. A couple years prior he did not. So Rico Dowdle, he's making most of his opportunity. And it makes you just think: is he truly really good at running back, or is he just in a good scheme that he's making the most of that opportunity? Because Chuba was also really good in this as well. And then when Jonathan Brooks returns, that just makes things even murkier going forward. If they do commit to Rico, they just extended Chuba, so you don't know what's going to go on if that's the case. I wouldn't expect all three of them to stay around if all three of them can contribute in some way, shape, or form. And then he said Jacoby Myers or Kenneth Walker in PPR. I'm going to say Kenneth Walker. I'm playing Kenneth Walker today in DFS. Season low price. We'll get to him on the 3 o'clock slate and in the main slate. But um, one of his better games of the season, had 110 all-purpose yards against the Cardinals last time. And last week, I think he had a season best in terms of snap share differential between him and Charbonnet. Uh, had an okay day, but they were basically riding the hot hand because Sam Darnold was literally perfect in the first half. Did not miss a pass, 4 passing touchdowns. And so, but with that said, Charbonnet, first game of the year where he was below Kenneth Walker in terms of snap share. So I think we're trending in a good direction of where they should be going, which is Kenneth Walker is the guy. And so I'm going to ride that way again today, them being at home. And that's going to reflect the same thing in terms of PPR as they start sit decision. So that would be my answer to that. Don't mind Jacoby as a floor play if you don't trust Kenneth Walker's workload. But if you're talking about ceiling, I think Kenneth Walker has the better ceiling, the better matchup, and all that fun stuff. And like I said, if he doesn't work out, I'm going to be losing money because I'm going to be playing him today on some lineups. So that is my long-winded answer for you, Mr. Emery Cuzzy. But yeah, let's start out with the line. If you guys, while we're doing early only, if you want to shout out like, hey, I want to see a build with a specific guy, any start sit questions like Emery just mentioned, just let me know. We'll be here about another hour and a half, and be going through this late slate, main slate, prime time if we got time. But yeah, so let's start out. I think I want to start with Lamar Jackson. Main reason being, I don't think you need to double. You never need to double him. I think because of the hamstring injury, and he's not going to have the 100 yard, you know, upside as a rusher. You would think at least. I think you're fine single stacking him. Who to single stack is the big question. Zay Flowers, like I mentioned, showing good leverage. Mark Andrews caught 2 touchdowns his first game back, but that was his only 2 catches of the game. Had one, and they were both, I think, in the first quarter or quarter and a half. And he had 1 target the rest of the game. Isaiah Likely actually had the most yards. He just didn't score the touchdown because Charlie Kohler also had a touchdown. So 2,900. If you just wanted to single stack and just punt out tight end, because there's not a ton of tight end, like all the great tight ends today are on the late slate. Sam Laporta, George Kittle, Trey McBride. So the highest priced tight end is Dalton Kincaid. I think the highest owned will be Hunter Henry as a value. But if you just wanted to single stack him and punt it tight end to one of those two, I think that's perfectly fine. Or even double stacking him because It's not like they're crazy expensive. You just usually don't need to, at least on the Lamar side of things. And I don't think you need to bring back on the Minnesota side because of the pricing. If you had to, I would say Jordan Addison. I don't think you need to though. And then in terms of the running back situation, I think Aaron Jones is going to try to play. From what I remember, 5,200. He's been out snapping. Jordan Mason. Let's see. No, actually, Jordan Mason last week actually outsnapped him 60-42. So that just means that they were playing a lot of two running back sets as well. Um, but yeah, Jones 98 yards on 11 touches, very efficient, and he's still 5,200. Mason had similar amount of touches, just didn't. He's not a PPR back. But even if Aaron Jones doesn't play, it's not like Jordan Mason is just chalky, cheap. I still, even without Aaron Jones, I would still probably prefer all these guys around him. I didn't even mention Rashad White without Bucky Irving again. It's just not a great matchup, but he is a PPR threat. Derrick Henry didn't even mention him, but I prefer all those guys with Jordan like over Jordan Mason without Aaron Jones, if that makes any sense. Touchdown Atlanta, 14-13. I had a feeling that Atlanta was going to possibly sneak away with this game. It felt like it was too large of a spread for a Germany game. So, and on top of that, they got embarrassed 2 weeks ago. Last week almost stole one against the Patriots, and then if they lose today, I think they go to 3-6, and that's putting them really behind the eight ball since Tampa Bay is running away, and you wouldn't expect this division to have two representatives in the playoffs. So I think the season on the line kind of aggression, whereas the Colts are just kind of sitting pretty right now in firm control of the AFC South. I think I had a feeling. But I didn't play a line because the pricing was terrible. So sorry, I didn't send a way too early only showdown line. But yeah, moving forward, like I said, I'm gonna click his name every early only lineup that we play, and then we go from there. In terms of defense, I think Cleveland is by far the best, but I would not be surprised if Jacksonville had a really strong outing as well with Davis Mills, bad offensive line. They just have been more inconsistent and they're gettable even with Davis Mills in the fold. So if price didn't matter, I still side with Cleveland. So we'll see if we can make that work. Tight end wise, you're gonna have to punt no matter what. Harold Fannin got a Q tag, expected to play though. So I mentioned on the first look that David Njoku was too cheap. So maybe that was going to be some very good chalk if that were to be a thing. Let's go down. Let's be different and say likely. I like 2,900 as a price tag. It's very safe, and it's not like there's a ton of ceiling plays that you're risking. Like I don't think I'm going to play likely on the main slate at all, even with Lamar builds. I don't think I will, but on the early only, it's not like there's a ton of crazy tight ends that could go off unless they're double touchdown efforts. And I will do a Drake May build right after this one. Let me throw some of this together really quick, and then we'll move on to that one. Then we'll get into the afternoon only. Receiver up top. Let's see if we can just double dip right there. Travion Henderson, like I said, 5,600, 5,900 remainder. Last guy in. That's Tracy. That's Diggs. That's Kyle Monangai. If you want to be very, very different, like I said, pulling no ownership right now in a great matchup. So that's very easily a way to be different of the field. If you wanted to bring back, you can go him, and then that's enough for a Mark Andrews if you wanted to go that route. Um, or see, we got the correlation with the Buka. We got Travion Henderson. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to go common guy here in this specific build, at least. It would be cool to get up to Quinshon. I don't know how we could specifically do that with this build. We would have to get off the Zay Flowers and go to a Wandale who's pulling ownership. But if they're pulling ownership and they're still good leverage, does that just mean they're a good play? Or you could go down to Jacoby Myers. go up. It's not like there's a ton of expensive plays other than like James Cook that I really kind of want to get to. But even if you did that, like you're really punting uh, at receiver and you're punting at tight end. So I think I'd rather do a balanced build if I'm being honest with you. Let's go ahead. We'll wrap it up and we'll go with Quinshawn and Wandell as the last. Oh, that's Shakir. Yeah, that's my first look with Lamar as a double, no bring back, but you got correlation with the New England Tampa game and then the Cleveland Browns and their running back. Let's go with Emery's thought process with a Drake May build. He's another one that shockingly you don't need to double if you don't want to. I'm going to in this example, and on top of that, you're going to get away from Travion Henderson by doing so. So we're going to just click on that guy's name. We're going to put Cleveland's D in. If we have to go down to Jacksonville, we can. But I think it's probably the best bet is to do. You know what? I don't. I hate when Hunter Henry is highly owned. I really do. And right now, he is the highest owned tight end on the entire slate today, or second highest owned. I'm sorry, 13.6% owned today, and I hate that. I really do. 3,500. His floor is just. Or I mean, it's not even like the floor doesn't really matter when you're $3,500 tight end, but it's not like he has much boom. He has the occasional 8 for 90, which I think most of that came in the first half, 2 touchdowns. But other than that, I just don't like getting to him. And if Booty's out, let me see in terms of other New England pass catchers. Like Matt Collins gets snaps, but he doesn't really do a ton with it. He had last week, Booty only played 26% because he left the game due to injury. Demario Douglas had 100 yards and he was fifth on the team in wide receiver snaps. That is good to know. Um, Stephon Diggs about 60%. He's been hovering around that the entire season. Matt Collins led the team with snaps, but just doesn't get targets. Kyle Williams actually, let me see what he did because he actually pulled 46% of the snaps last week. He's minimum price. He had one target. You know, you know, I don't know. I guess I'll have to do Hunter Henry. That's fine. Because I don't want to after a big week for Demario Douglas and he's fifth on the team in snaps. It's not like his increased at all. He's been around 25% for about a month and a half now. And Booty left the first half and didn't get any increase. He just caught a long ball. So that scares me away at $4,000. So basically, it's you get weird with a Matt Collins or a Kyle Pitt or a Kyle Williams, or you just do the obvious one, which is Stephon Diggs and Hunter Henry, which I think is fine. If you're bringing back, I think the only bring back options to me are Emeka and Rashad White. So I think, let's see, ownership wise, Sterling Shepard is pulling 7%, but everybody is the negative leverage play in this game at receiver except for Stephon Diggs. So that's pretty gross. Even at tight end, other than Hunter Henry, like even Kate Otten is negative leverage. If you're looking at running back, Rashad White, negative leverage. Trayvon Henderson, slightly positive leverage, but I don't want to triple stack. He does have pass catching upside, but let's do this. Let's do this. But I don't want to play too much Travion. That's just going to make me sad. I already know it. Let's go with Quinshawn in this build. 5,800 per guy left. You could go down cheap and then try to go up. What are you trying to afford? James Cook? 4,100 remainder. Remember, we do have a $300 buffer if we wanted to get up to Jacksonville. Or I mean down to Jacksonville. You got 4,400 remainder. That's Keon Coleman. That's Darius Slayton. If we went down from Quinshawn and we went to, let's say, DeAndre Swift, right? $4,800 remainder. That's just enough for Jacoby Myers. I think Emery would like that. Well, you wouldn't like it if you decide to go with Kenneth Walker and then Jacoby pops off for 20. I think you'd be quite upset. But at the same time, I think that's pretty solid. If you wanted to go to common unguy instead, be very, very different. That's enough for, once again, Wandale Robinson. That's enough for Khalil Shakir. I don't want to play two, or I mean, you can't play two Bills without Josh Allen, but you got that. Or let's say instead of Emeka as the bring back, you go Rashad White, right? And then instead defense, I don't really care as much with the correlation because it is going to be a lower total game. Last time they scored 17 points for him to get to 26 fantasy points. So it's not like him going off just equally means Jacksonville will not pan out. They still had 12 fantasy points while Nico had 26. So I'm not really afraid of doing single one offs. Now, if you do a double stack, I don't want to play the opposing defense. But one offs, I don't really care nearly as much as probably most would. But once again, Jacoby Myers as a correlated play. You got the double stack of New England, bring back with Rashad White, staying alone with Rico, and then the wide receiver, what you would think wide receiver one of both teams for Jacksonville and Houston. And it's different because I don't think either will pull crazy amount of ownership today. Nico, at least, let's look at him because I have not looked at his ownership in a second. On the main slate, 3.5% lock and load. I don't care. That's way too low to me today. But yeah, and then you squeeze in James Cook. Like I said, Devon Achane is still there as well. But again, I'd rather have James Cook for 60% of the ownership of what Devon Achane will have. If Devon's going to be 50% owned, Cook is going to be about 30. I think Cook has higher upside today. So I'm gonna just go ahead and go with that. Let's go. All right. Let's finish. We'll finish up with that. I ran a little long on the early only on this one. I do want to play some afternoon because the afternoon only is really, really enticing today. If I am being honest, it's a 3-gamer. Biscuits and gravy, you say? Don't look at that. All right. So yeah, this is fun. Marcus Mariota is the cheap quarterback on the slate. Couple game sample size as a starter, 17 and 21 fantasy points respectively. That could get you there today. But there are some fun quarterback plays up top that are not rushing upside quarterbacks. So Matthew Stafford is playing out of his freaking mind right now. 21-2 touchdown interception ratio, negative six rushing yards on the season, but yeah, he's still averaging over 21 fantasy points a game. 9 touchdowns the last 2 games. One of those was without Puka Nacua, and he's only not getting the 300-yard bonus because they're shitting on the team so bad. This game, I mean, he wouldn't have got there regardless probably, but this one, they pulled their foot off the gas. Plus, Puka left the game due to injury, 19 yards away, but 4 passing touchdowns. For the last 5 games, at least 26 fantasy points. So he's a season high price tag, but he's earned it. And on top of that, the last time he did play the San Francisco 49ers was one of his highest passing volume, or the highest passing volume game of the season. Had 47 pass attempts, 389 passing yards, 3 touchdowns in an overtime loss to the 49ers. So, man, that's a really good spot. I am very interested in some Jared Goff today, though. We talked about Sam Darnold and how he went off last week against the Washington Commanders. Well, guess who's playing them today? An even better offense, Jared Goff. The problem is he's just no rushing upside, so he's got to be involved on all the touchdowns. And I think there's really good opportunity where they could be 4 or 5 touchdown scores today. And if that's the case, he's got 300-yard upside. He's got 3 passing touchdown upside, $5,900. And right now, in terms of ownership, he's like the 4th highest at about 7.5%. But most of the people are not really playing. I mean, most people are going to probably play doubles that are pretty self-explanatory. But because it's a 3-gamer, I think the way to get different is either just playing the run game of Detroit and saying they're going to score all the rushing touchdowns, or you triple stack this team because I think it's very affordable to do so. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's the big one to spend up for. He's been awesome once again this year. 7 touchdowns, one of the highest in the league. Receiving, and he would be due for one. We saw JSN have 120 yards in the first half last week as a wide receiver one. And so, he even in blowouts can go off. So I'm not necessarily concerned on any kind of floor for him. I think he's just as safe as they come. Problem is that he's on the same slate with JSN and Puka. Really hard to get two of those three. So if you do go for Amon-Ra, you're probably fading Puka, JSN, and for that matter, Christian McCaffrey. So that's a little scary. But at the same time, if everybody's going to be high owned and he's the lowest of the bunch, like right now, if I'm looking at skill players, let me filter to skill players. If I'm looking at ownership right now of the 3 o'clock players, you got Christian McCaffrey. Oh, he's actually slightly higher than JSN. Puka is the highest owned receiver. Christian McCaffrey is the third highest owned running back. Amon-Ra is right above JSN, showing slight negative leverage, but I understand that because the other three are projecting so well, and they're probably just optimizers are probably just mix and matching those guys up top. But Jameson Williams has been wrong a lot, but I at least nailed the showdown when he got 6 for 66 and a score. That was his first big game, or I mean, consistent game of the year. He caught a long touchdown against Chicago, but other than that, he's been at absolute zero in terms of his draft capital this year. Did do pretty solid last week. So 2 of the last 3 games has had, some of his best opportunity of the season. 0 for 0 against Tampa Bay, but same matchup, bottom 5 against receivers. And I think the way to get different, like I said, if I want Detroit exposure, is doing doubles or triples that don't involve just the easy Sam Laporta, who's way too cheap, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So either adding another or fading the pass game entirely and going with the running game is the way to get different with Detroit, who probably have the highest total on the entire day, implied team total. Sam Darnold was really good from a quarterback perspective last time he played the Cardinals, but 16 fantasy points, not exciting. Only was involved on 1 touchdown, but he was really great as a quarterback. But Kyler on the other side, who we faded in that game, salvage coming back to tie it up and outscored him, or not. Yeah, outscored him 18 fantasy points that game. Obviously, Kyler's out today. That doesn't really matter. I'm just saying as a perspective. So it's not the best matchup. I don't think a lot of people are going to be going with the Seattle route in terms of stacks. I think most people will go with the Rams, Detroit, or punt way down to Marcus Mariota. I will say that I think Brock Purdy is going to be active, but Mac Jones is going to start. Yeah, so Purdy, if active, would merely be a QB2. So it is Mac Jones once again. And Mac Jones, similarly to Matthew Stafford, his best game of the season was against the Los Angeles Rams in that overtime game where he had 49 pass attempts, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, and was awesome despite, getting pretty banged up. So coming off of their week 9 bye, I think it's excuse me. Actually, I'm sorry, they didn't even have a bye last week. But once again, $5,000 pretty reasonable. And I can't forget about Jacoby Brissett, man. Every start this year, at least 20 fantasy points. His price has not gone up at all. It's last 2 weeks has been $4,500 and $4,700. I know this was on the Monday slate, but if you play Thursday, Monday, Sunday, Monday, it would have worked out for you very well with 3 combined touchdowns. The biggest thing is he just throws to his guys. So Trey McBride, 4 touchdowns in 3 games, which is a revelation because he took 17 weeks to have a receiving touchdown last year. Marvin Harrison having a breakout game. I know he got concussed in this Indy game when it was Jacoby's first start. That made me really sad because he was going to have a really good day. Green Bay was okay. But then Dallas, he truly went off. Should have had 100 yards, but Jacoby missed him late in the game twice, I think. But a lot of mid-tier receivers out in this slate. Terry McLaurin re-injured himself back against the Chiefs, so he will be out once again. And so Deebo Samuel going to pick up some ownership, was blown out last week, so it kind of limited his ceiling. But the 2-game sample size with Marcus Mariota as a starter, he had 11 opportunities. He had 9 opportunities. He went over 20 fantasy points in both games, and he's sub 6K. He's the ultimate bring back in that game if you wanted to go that route. So I don't mind that at all. Torrey Horton, doubtful. And it doesn't look like Cooper Kupp's going to play. So Rashid Shaheed, debuting as a Seahawk, he's expensive for the unknown. But it's fun because it's a similar ordeal of, good opportunity, good volume. If people were to remain out, Devontae is going to be really tough to get to a 77, especially with all the guys I mentioned that you avoid by playing Amon-Ra St. Brown. Tight end wise, like I mentioned, all the big names. I really want to get to as much of these 3 as possible today. So Trey McBride, way overweight. George Kittle, way overweight. I wouldn't say way overweight, but overweight. And Sam Laporta, way overweight. So the 2 highest owned tight ends right now that I have on the day is Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, and George Kittle is picking up the rear. But I am still probably, what is his ownership? Like 8%. So I'm probably triple the field of him right now. I'm really all about getting these tight ends. They're way too cheap. And on this afternoon slate, I don't mind doing double tight end. I love doing double tight end. So Steig saying Jacoby cooking that brisket. Yeah, he is going crazy right now. Jacoby is Dusty's king, and it doesn't make sense if we don't start off with the Cardinals build. I did put it in Cardinals defense. They're 2,200, and that's really cheap. I think they've been a pretty solid defense throughout the year, getting healthier. And last time they did play Seattle, they did fine, didn't do great, but $2,200 I think opens up a ton, and I'd rather do them than the Commanders. And that 500 savings from the next most expensive defense or next cheapest defense, I think it opens up a lot because I want to try to fit in as many studs as I can on this slate. So I'm going to get rock and roll. And if I'm starting with the Jacoby double, I'm going to start with Trey McBride in the line and Marvin Harrison, pretty reasonable price. Not a great matchup, but I think that's pretty much the way I feel comfortable doing a double stack of Arizona, or I just do a single and figure it out. But $5,300, very reasonable price. Running back wise, I'm going to be fading Christian McCaffrey today. I don't like that he's the highest owned player at the position. I know he's projecting well, but this is the team that's number 1 against running backs. Last time he did play the Rams, had 9 targets, 8 for 82 from the receiving game, but his worst game of the season in terms of rushing performance, 2.5 yards a carry. So they're home dogs. I don't love spending $9,000 for a guy that I have to rely on his pass catching, which I know it's been there all year, but I'd rather just go $1,000 cheaper for Jameer. I'd rather go to all of these receivers over him. He's probably my 4th favorite of the most expensive guys on this slate, so I'm going to be fading him today. Kyron Williams, shouted him out. It was annoying that it was the anomaly 2 touchdowns receiving, but it was a good matchup. 32 fantasy points is his best on the season by far, and very solid matchup once again today against the 49ers. He's kind of right by himself on this slate. He's in a loaded 6K range on the main, but by himself here, I think it's pretty easy to click on his name. And then I mentioned earlier to M, I'm playing some Kenneth Walker today. Last time he did play the Cardinals, 12 fantasy points, 110 yards. He just didn't score the touchdown that Charbonnet sniped from him, and that's been a problem all season long. But his first game last week, where he outsnapped Zach Charbonnet, season low price, at home, they're favored. He's not a $5 running back yet, but he will be hopefully one day. And I just think he's way too cheap, and I'd rather go him than Bam Knight, who's 200 more. Jacory Krosky-Merritt is starting to get outsnapped by Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols. Well, not Jeremy, but Chris Rodriguez, at least last week, was the guy. It's not a great matchup anyway. David Montgomery, you can get me behind. I don't mind that, especially if I have to get to some Detroit for 5,000. But running back is pretty gross if you're not spending up. So I think those are probably my preferences on the afternoon slate. And then you got to get to some Detroit. I think most, if not every single one of my lines has at least one Detroit player. And I mentioned Jameson Williams and his cheap price tag. And I also mentioned that I don't mind double stacking tight end. So if I didn't go Amon-Ra and I went Sam Laporta, or if I went both, doesn't really matter to me. But if you did that, I know we're playing a Arizona build right now, but in this specific line, that's enough for Jared Goff as a double with Monra and Laporta. But in this specific sample, we're going to try to make something else work. So 55, like I said, the mid K on the 3K or the 3 o'clock slate is pretty gross. So that's why I do like double tight end so much with whether it's George Kittle, Sam Laporta, McBride. I don't know. What do you guys think? Ranking those three, based on price, Trey McBride at 6, George Kittle at 4.5, and Sam Laporta at 4.4. Rank those 1 through 3 for me if you're in the chat and you're interested in some double tight end today. But I mean, I guess because of the fact that I don't really think you need to in a Jacoby build, there's nothing really you're spending up to. I guess if you wanted to, instead of Kyron, you wanted to go all the way up to Jameer, you could, but that's like that's not crazy to me. But if you wanted to, you want to get a piece of the Rams because they're high implied total, you want to get the correlation with George Kittle, that you could just pay up a defense. And I don't think anybody would hate you for doing that. Seattle being the highest, I'm not in this line, but they've been really, really consistent all year. They've had at least 8 fantasy points in every single game, except for this Bucs shootout where they had -3. So they've been one of the most consistent defenses. They get sacks. Turnover wise, they're pretty solid at it, but they are great at just not allowing points so far this year. So I understand why they're pricey. I'm not playing them in this build. Maybe you want to get Detroit because Detroit is starting to play a little better. 5 of the last 6 games, at least 8 fantasy points. They're going against Marcus Mariota. People are going to be wanting to play Marcus Mariota, but I don't mind doing that. I don't really want to get, well, the Rams have been pretty solid. I don't know. Defensively, you can also leave salary on the table too, for what it's worth. But yeah, I'd say let's go ahead and do that first look. Um, what do you think about that, Dusty? That double with the bring back of Kenneth Walker. That would just make the whole world happy, wouldn't it? 500 remainder. You got Kenneth Walker in there. You're double tied in. You got Jacoby Brissett. I don't know if anybody else is going to have this line. So if we're doing defense, price doesn't matter. My hesitation, I think I side with the Rams. I think because they're playing Matt Jones. Maybe it's a lower scoring game. Last time it wasn't though. Or you got Detroit on the road. Heavy favorite on the road. I think it's one of those two. Maybe Seattle sneaks in if you're not doing a double with Arizona. But I think I side with one of these two, and I'll just say Rams for a little bit more salary relief. You did JSN instead of ARSB. I don't mind that. The problem is I want at least one Detroit. So if you did go that route, that's totally fine. But I think instead of George Kittle, I'll go down to Sam Laporta. And same concept, double tight end. You get the dominant wide receiver. And even if you didn't like him, that's enough for Puka as well. But that's fine. I think that's totally fine. You want a JMO. Okay. How did you get to JMO? 48, 49. I wonder if you went 49ers defense. Or did you fade one of these guys? But yeah, I got some JMO today. That's the most nervous of him, but he also, the ceiling's there for a reason. And as long as he's under 5K, like I don't mind investing in him in good matchups. But let's pretend that you did this. And But yeah, I don't mind leaving the salary on the table. I think double tight end is probably the way I'll be going on the afternoon slates. But I don't mind this. I don't hate anybody in this line at all. But yeah, let's go with a Sam Darnold build for Emery, and then I'll do a Jared Goff one, and then we'll at that point probably be around the time for the official inactive list if there's anything crazy. I don't think we're waiting on anything that is if then we're really loading up on a specific player or team. So unless there's something crazy that goes on, but anyways, so we got Sam Darnold, JSN. You got no Torrey Horton today. You've got likely no Cooper Cup. That doesn't really affect me one way or the other, even though we're waiting on that news. I will say, let me pull up the snap counts real quick for Seattle because I think Elijah Arroyo is starting to get some run now. Well, it hasn't really increased in terms of price, not price, snap share, but opportunity wise, he caught his first touchdown last week. The week before had 5 targets, which was his season best. And in the showdown that we had against Arizona the last time, 2 for 44, that was our minimum price or our below 1,000 stand that we took, and that worked out in a good way. He also had a couple of end zone targets in that game. So $2,600, don't mind that. And AJ Barner actually has a Q tag. I didn't notice that, but he seems likely to play full practice on Friday. So he's, I guess, fine. I just don't really, I'm not really interested in going the tight end route for Seattle today. I think if I'm going to double Seattle, even though I like Kenneth Walker, I'd rather do Shaheed than Kenneth Walker, basically the same price. It just makes you feel better, makes more sense. So let's go ahead and do that. I like Arizona's defense, but I can't do that in this build. So let's go Arizona. Sorry, let's go with the Rams. Bring back, if I have to pick one, it's going to be Trey McBride. It is expensive, but let's see if we can make that work. Running back wise, kind of the similar names, but can't play Kenneth Walker, so that makes it tough. Let's try to fit in a double like that. And I have an idea. I didn't mention his name yet, but Juwan Jennings I think is pretty fun as a 4,600. He's had 3 straight games with at least 20% target share. Caught his first touchdown since week 2 last week. Didn't do much after that, but he almost had a second touchdown as well. So 19 targets in 3 games, 3 games with 4 receptions. I think it's a reasonable price point. And last time we did see a game without that he missed against the Los Angeles Rams. That was the Kendrick Bourne game that he went 10 for 142. So I don't hate that. 5,500 remaining. That's why running back's tough today because it makes you want to, it forces you to go up or you got to get gross at running back. And so let's say David Montgomery, 600 remainder. That allows you to do whatever you want. Don't want, if you wanted Jameson Williams instead of Sam Laporta, you can go George Kittle as the second guy. And that's also enough for Juwan Jennings for what it's worth. But you get 2 Detroit guys. You get David Montgomery and Jameson Williams. If I had to guess, I think that they would be the 4th and 5th highest owned Detroit players today because I think Amon-Ra might be the highest. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to pull some ownership, but Sam Laporta will be high owned as well. So if you went the 4th and 5th highest owned Detroit players, double up on the highest implied team total, and that makes it work. Double tight end. It correlates with Kyron and George Kittle. You can get up to Detroit defense if you want. Jameson Williams, like I mentioned, Rashid Shaheed. It's just an unknown because I don't know how quickly he'll be having the report, but it does help with Cooper Kupp and Torrey Horton likely both out today. So I think that's a fun build for a Seattle double. What do you think, Em? Oh, you went Cards defense on that, Dusty. Devontae Smith or Shaheed in redraft. I think Devontae Smith is really kind of gaining some steam. So I think I feel much better about him. But again, Shaheed has the over the top stuff. But Green Bay, I think they're gettable in the secondary. And Devontae Smith with AJ Brown back, I think he's really kind of gaining some steam. So I would side with the Devontae part of that. But like I said, that's a fun one. David Montgomery, haven't really talked much about him, but $5,000, that's a tied for a season low in price. He's going to have 10 to 15 opportunities a game. He's touchdown or bust, but when it's a gross running back slate and you don't want to spend up at running back, it's not like you can say, oh, Bam Knight's a better play. Kenneth Walker, I like him more, but I'm not going to triple stack Seattle. I think Sam Laporta, if he goes off, unless he throws a 50-yard screen to Kenneth Walker, I don't see both of them just smashing today. Obviously not Charbonnet. JCM, bad matchup, plus losing opportunity. And then it's all backup running backs from here. So I think that makes the most sense for a double with Sam Darnold. But yeah, let's clear out. Let's do a Detroit. I want a triple stack. That's how interested I am in Detroit today. This time I'm going to go down all the way down to defense because I want to afford this stuff. But we're going to go him. We're going to go him. We're going to go Jameson. Like I said, the way I think you get different, because I think a lot of people will do that. Goff, St. Brown, Laporta. You either add another piece or you do similarly to what we just did with the Seattle build, which was you go with the leverage of David Montgomery and Jameson Williams being the fourth and fifth highest owned guys. But with this specific sample, Detroit drops 40 today. Is it capable or possible that they have at least three guys go off? Yeah, absolutely. We saw the Chicago one where they went off for 50. I know Gibbs went for a touchdown. I know Montgomery went for a touchdown. I know Amon-Ra went for 3. I know Jameson went for 1. I think Laporta was the only one that didn't go off that day. Ironically, that was my second most exposed line that day. But you also got let's look at the Cincinnati sample, right? 37. Let me pull that game log up. Against the Cincinnati Bengals. Back in week 5, just as another example, Amon-Ra goes 8 for 100. Sam Laporta did 5 for 92 and a touchdown. Gibbs receiving touchdown. Montgomery scored a touchdown. Isaac Tesla and Brock Wright both score touchdowns as well. And Goff goes for 258 and 3 tugs. So there's ways to triple. And I think people usually get afraid of doing triple stacks. So that's why I am so interested in doing that on the afternoon slate. It really is. He just is going to naturally fall into a lot of lines for me. Kyron, especially on afternoon, just because he's by himself. And it just makes you feel safe, especially coming off a really strong outing last time against the 49ers. Kenneth Walker is going to go back in this line. And then we got about 6,100 per. You can go with Debo. You can go last guy in being Trey McBride. So you got 700 remainder, double tight end, triple stack, fun bring back. I don't even think we brought back Debo in the last couple lines. But the thing is, 700 remainder, you don't get more than just 49ers defense. And I think I feel better about Arizona holding Seattle in check than I do with the 49ers holding the Rams in check. So that's fine. It's not like if you fade him, you can't afford anything else. If you wanted to take out Kenneth Walker, you get Bam Knight. I don't want Bam Knight over Kenneth Walker. If you didn't want Debo, same thing. Can't afford anything else. So really the only way that you're different, that you can improve or swap out is if you wanted to go Trey McBride at tight end. And then that's enough for David Montgomery as last guy in, wherever he is. Oh, I put him back at flex. That's why I couldn't see. So yeah, putting Trey McBride there, you got 5,100 left. So that's enough for David Montgomery. You got Juwan Jennings, I mentioned again, if you wanted a San Francisco piece. If you didn't want Laporta and you wanted George Kittle instead, same concept, 600 remainder double tight end. But you're double stacking this time. But because you're not going the Sam Laporta route, you're going the other side of things, which I think Sam Laporta is actually pulling more ownership than both McBride. Yeah. So Trey McBride about 8.8 on the main slate. You got George Kittle about 8% on the main slate. You got Laporta about 13. So they're both the lower owned tight ends. And I think that Laporta would probably be about 25 to 30% owned on this slate. And That's the way to get different is you're double stacking, but you're going JMO. So that's cool too. I think my gut would just because, like I said, I want to do some triple stacking. I think I'd rather do that. And if I had to try to make some changes, it's not like you're doing anything because you really got to go up from Kenneth Walker if you're going to go that far. You can maybe go down from Debo and go to Juwan Jennings. That's enough for Jahmyr Gibbs. So that's quadruple stacking. So in this event, I would probably go with George Kittle, I think. You got two 49ers in there, but that's not really fun. Two 49ers, no Rams doesn't sound fun. So that's why it's so tough. And that's why I'm so open to leaving salary on the table. So going that and then pick your poison between Kittle and Laporta is probably my favorite way to build a triple or a Jared Goff build on the afternoon slate. Goodell is pounding beers in Berlin. Love to see it. Hell yeah. It's never too early for beer o'clock. Yeah, that's my last look for Detroit as a triple. Like I said, triple stack. You got the bring back of Debo. You're different because you got salary on the table. You're different because you got double tight end. You're different because you triple stacked. And you faded JSN, Puka, and Christian McCaffrey in the same line. That does sound terrifying, but sometimes you gotta be open to doing some crazy things. We've had back-to-back weeks where there's been a contest that we had the nuts. Last week was primetime. The week before was the Thursday night showdown, and you had to do something weird and different. So we went 5-1 build on the Chargers against the Vikings. That panned out. And then last week, what did we do different? I know we left salary on the table on that primetime. I think it's because we went Sam Darnold. That's what the difference was because he was the third highest owned quarterback, and you double stacked him with Torrey Horton, who scored 2 touchdowns. Shout out to Nick for calling that out. And then you also had JSN. You had to have him in there, and then you faded a lot of because the running back slate was gross in general. So Javonte was high owned, and they all scored basically under 10 points. And then Cardinals defense. So that's all that worked out in that regard. But ran through that really quickly. Last second, if you guys did want to do, let's do for funsies. We'll do a Mariota build because we still got about 5 minutes until the news comes out for the inactives. I'll do that. If I'm doing Mariota, you don't need to double. You don't need to. The 2-game sample I'll pull up that he had as a starter. Sorry, I'm doing that on my phone. It's just very much quicker, and you get less clickage from the mic. Let's see. So 2-game sample, like I mentioned, one time they did blow out the the Raiders. They dropped 40 on them. And Mariota, 1 passing touchdown, only 21 pass attempts. McLaurin, 3 for 74, was the best receiver on the day. But Luke McCaffrey, 3 for 56 in the score. And then Debo had 2 for 11. You had Zach Ertz had 3 for 38. So that didn't work out very well if you did either of those guys. And even if you did include Terry in that. And then the following week, in a somewhat shootout against the Atlanta Falcons, it is not loading. There we go. So Debo went off. So I mentioned that in the other the sample with Debo going off, he had about 20 fantasy points. But Zach Ertz 2 for 21. Luke McCaffrey 2 for 21. No one else had more than 20 receiving yards. So Marcus Mariota, both games had a really strong sample, and you didn't need to double. And I think that's perfectly fine not doubling because I think there is such a big gap between Zach Ertz today and the next 3 tight ends, and you only have to spend $400 or $500 for 2 of them. So I'd much rather do that. I've played a lot of Trey McBride, so let's see if we avoid him on this route. But we're going to stay with that double tight end approach. So we're going to go Kittle and Laporta in this line. We got 7,000 per, which is a decent amount. Once again, I'm going to put Walker in, and then once again, I'm going to put Kyron in. Almost. So maybe you do got a double punt for Detroit or at running back. Sorry, because 8,000 per. I was really trying to fit two of these guys up here. Obviously, I'd want JSN and then either Puka or Monra, but you still need to save $900, and that naturally is going to be probably pivoting off Kyron. I don't think there's any cheap receivers that are standing out to me. Yeah, I mean, Zay Jones is going to get some snaps. He had no targets last week. Michael Wilson had 3 for 61. I guess you could do that. You have no Arizona for what it's worth. Or instead of doing this, let's try to do this instead. So we'll go down to Marvin. Almost got him. I was trying to get some CMC just because he's going to be high owned and a lot of people are going to be on him. It's tough. It's tough when you're trying to get two of these top guys. So you got to go with Jameer instead. 800 remainder. You got 2 Detroit guys. None of them are receivers. 600 remainder. Doesn't afford you anything for Marvin. So maybe you go up at defense. No, you can't. It's gross. I don't know. Let's go. We go Laporta at tight end instead. Once again, that allows you to get to Shaheed, 52, David Montgomery. You double stack Detroit running back. I know Emery loves doing that. If you went that route, double stack the running back game, Sonic and Knuckles each punch one in once again because they're very good at doing that. Go to George Kittle. That makes you feel a little better. You got exposure to everybody that you want to. You got a single stack double bring back, and it makes a lot of sense the way you're doing it. You've got wide receiver ones for both of these teams, and then you've got the only thing is you don't have a ramp. Other than that, that's pretty solid, I would say. Danny Dimes fumble, Atlanta ball at midfield. Are we in the fourth yet? What do we got? 17-13, Atlanta's up. 10 minutes in the third. Actually, that game, I feel like that's going later than normally, like around 11 o'clock is when the fourth, because the last 2 times when we were sweating 4 picks with TJ Hawkinson, that was like as soon as the stream is ending, I'm like staying in this office by myself, sweating that final matchup before I head out. But nobody's. I mean, London's having a really good day. Alec Pierce having a really good day. JT's kind of held in, 90, I guess 99 yards is held in check for JT, but there's still 25 minutes left. I guess Bijan is the one that's more being held in check, but 17-13, Atlanta's fighting for their life right now. So, but yeah, we're 10:30 on the dot, guys. We're going to go into the main now. I said we're going to be here about 30 minutes. So when we're in the main, if you do have any builds that you want me to look into, if you want to have any specific stacks or guys you want to force in, just let me know. But we'll play around with a couple of looks. I'm pretty condensed today, so I'm not going to do 20 lines like I have been doing. I'm going to do 10 actually today. And I think they're going to be 3 specific quarterbacks. I think I'm going to go with Lamar at 68. I think I'm going to go with not Sam at all, Jared Goff at 59. And I'm also going to go with Jacoby Brissett, Dusty's guy, at 46. I think those are the 3 guys I'm going with. So I took a stand on 1 dominant quarterback, 1 mid-tier quarterback, and 1 cheap quarterback. That's really the approach that what I'm doing today. Josh Allen and Lamar, I don't have a dog in the fight, but I think I don't have a dog in the fight. I can try to sway you on who will have the better day. One could go for. I hope they both go for 28, and I stacked it correctly. That's really what it comes down to. I don't think you really need to go either. I think I just feel a little better about the stackable options with Baltimore than I do Buffalo, and that's what the tiebreaker was for me. Stafford, it's just tough to stack. If you go, you got to double, and it's really easy to be like, yeah, you got to double with Puka and Devontae, and then all of a sudden you're out of money. So it's tough to build around. Drake May, slight weather. it's also inconsistencies on who is going off, and he hasn't really needed to double either. I was going to play some Caleb, but not anymore. So hopefully he does enough for fantasy football redraft purposes. But at least in our lines today, we're going to avoid that route. Jared Goff, like I said, I feel pretty good about Detroit today. Mara is the thumbnail for a reason. So go that route. Even though Mariota on paper is a good matchup, Detroit's playing better lately, and I could just see this being another blowout where Washington's running out of bodies. So tough. Yeah, I think those are my three dogs. And then, like I said, if you have another quarterback that you want to build a main slate line with, just let me know, and I'll happily do so before we do get out of here around 11 o'clock. But starting off, let's go with Lamar. I think Zay Flowers, I didn't feel great about going in, but I really like that he's the highest leverage play. Um, so I'm going to rock with that. Defense wise, I think it's Browns. I think it's Jags. And I think it's Cardinals for me today. All under 3K. Browns, it makes sense. It's against the Jets. This could be very well be a 10-7 game, and that's why you like it. With the Jacksonville Jaguars playing backup Davis Mills, I think they'll be popular today for that very reason. In terms of ownership today, let's see. Baltimore is actually the second highest owned defense at 33. Jacksonville's all the way down 4%. I didn't expect it to be that low, but it's pretty easy to get overweight to. And then Cardinals, like I said, it just is so cheap. It allows you to afford whatever you want. So I don't mind going that route, to be honest. Let's see. Cardinals showing about 2.8%. I'm going to be way with the field by default on that, but showing positive leverage at least, which is good. And defense is random as hell. So sue me. Like I said earlier, Baltimore, you don't need to double Lamar, but there's affordable options because both tight ends are so cheap. I think his Zay Flowers plus one of the tight ends is the route I would go if I was doing so. But because there's so many good tight ends, I think I'm just fine doing the single of Zay Flowers, and that's it. And hopefully I'm right. If I'm wrong, that's gonna suck. But even let's see, look at Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman, 4% owned, 3,900. It's fine. It's not great, but it's there as well. I don't know. I feel like I'm doing more balanced builds today than high low, like a lot of people are probably approaching because of the great names Puka, JSN, Christian McCaffrey, Amon-Ra being the highest owned on top of being the studs they are. So I feel like a lot of people are trying to jam two of them in and then just trying to find cheap punts somewhere. And I just feel better about the value of just doing mid-price guys. So with that said, though, let's try to get some Detroit action. So Sam Laporta is going in this line. You've got on running back wise, Rico's going to go in most of my lines today. I'm going to be honest, probably about 70, 80%. I'm going to eat. I think good chalk is what I would consider him today. The way to get different is pretty self-explanatory. You just, I don't know. It's really easy to get different on me. And so I don't really overreact or try to force things that I hate in because I like to have some fun. This isn't me being an optimizer. I'm a hand builder and it's worked out for me so far. Maybe it could work out even more if I did optimizer shit, but I need the money to do that. So um, with that said, let's try to fit in the second running back. I think Travion Henderson, I like to match up the opportunity today, and hopefully he just keeps on what it was last week, but this time he scores the touchdown. So $5,600, about 10% owned. I'm going to do a quick refresh on projections. Let's see. You've got ownership wise, Travion Henderson's about 10% owned. So it's not crazy. And it's just very easy for whatever you want. On the other side of the Laporta stuff, I'm going to try to put in some Debo. And then you got $6,600 per. That's kind of a lot of different directions, honestly. You can go up to, let's say, JSN. That's $4,600. That's enough for Jawan Jennings and not and, but Juwan Jennings or George Kittle. I don't know if I have a preference between the two. The thing is, I think George probably is going to project better. He's going to be higher owned. But the thing is, nobody plays double tight end. So doing that, you get the single stack, no bring back. I don't really want to do bring backs with Baltimore builds today, but you get two good running backs that are mid priced. You get a pretty solid bring back or correlation with Laporta and Samuel today. And then you got Jason as your top dog. I know it's a little different going against Cardinals. Like I said, I don't really care about doing that as one offs, anyways. And then you got George Kittle there as well. Say you want to go a little bit more balanced and you take out the double tight end, you can go with, let's say, Emeka Buka to bring back with the Travion Henderson. That's $6,200 per. That's enough for DeAndre Swift. That's enough for Rome Odunze, Trey McBride as the Arizona side of things. You can go way down. Or let's say you wanted to. How else would I want to do this? You could also go like as a standalone play, go Nico Collins. 65, that's Quinshon Judkins right there. Or Jalen Waddle or Rashad White. I think of the three, I side with Quinshon. Let me pull up pricing and compare and contrast. So Waddle has the highest ownership, but also slightly the highest projection. Rashad White is the lowest for both of those, and then Quinshon's right in the middle. So, but they're all other than Rashad, they're positive leverage and they're not crazy owned. But yeah, that's the last piece in. That's a lot of 12 o'clock games though. Kind of scary because of the viability of all the 3 o'clock players. So you only got three technically with the defense 3 o'clock games. So that makes me feel a little worse. But if you went all the way up to, let's say, you went to Amon-Ra, right? 48. That's enough for Jacoby Myers. That's enough for, once again, Juwan Jennings or George Kittle. Almost enough for Jameson. I think you'd have to go down to, like, you'd have to, well, I wouldn't want to play 2 Seattle, but you'd have to do something like that to afford you a JSN. So it probably makes the most sense if you went this route. You went Bam, and then your last guy in is going to be, I would say, just double tight end for this one. And just, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. It's fun. Double tight end's fun to me. And tight ends, for the most part, this year we've nailed. That's probably been our most consistent position on when we know who's popping off. So why not play two? That's what I say. But yeah, that's a Baltimore build. Like I said, if you have any suggestions or want to point out any specific quarterbacks or stacks, just let me know and I'll do some builds. Got about 20 minutes before I'm going to get out of here. Next up, let's go all the way down. Let's make Dusty happy with the Arizona double. And if I'm doing an Arizona double, I don't think I have to get indifferent. In terms of ownership today, let's see what Jacoby's pulling right now. Jacoby's pulling 4% ownership, guys. He's too cheap for just going off every game. Like, you need like 14 points to be really content with his day. And he's gotten at least 30 passing attempts every game. He's ran for touchdowns. He's had at least 2 passing touchdowns. And he's thrown it to the guys. So this is different enough because of the fact that nobody's playing Arizona. Like right now, if I filter that game out and I look at the ownership, Trey McBride's pulling 8.8, but there's ways to get different. He's also the highest leverage tight end on the slate. And then after that, less than sub 6% owned Marvin. You got 4.4% Jacoby. You got 4% Zonovan Knight. Cardinals defense is cheap. You've got Michael Wilson 2%. So nobody's playing Arizona. So let's make Dusty happy. You know, let's make him. Maybe he's the path to least resistance on cashing your lines today. Is just going with the Dusty love. If you would be betting on A&M this year, you'd be up a lot of money. So I think Arizona, we can't say that we're making money by betting money line, but we can make money by making double stacks of Arizona lines. Let's bring it back with JSN. You got $5,600 per. I'm going to try to squeeze in Rico Dowdle. I'll do this look, and then we'll take one out, and then we'll put in Wilson just as a different look, since I'm not really punting a lot at any of the positions. Let's get different also and go Kamanungai. It's a good matchup. Nobody is playing him right now. In terms of ownership on the running backs, like I said earlier, DeAndre Swift about 7%, and then you got Kamanungai is at 2%. And so they're less than 10% combined owned, and it's a great matchup. And if one or the other was going to be out today, the one playing would probably be in at least 50% of my lines. So why not just be overweight with one of the many lines that you make if you do play a lot of lines? $5,300 per, though, is kind of tough. That's like a mid-priced receiver, like a Zay, plus, once again, similar boat where we were last time. Or you can go with a mid-priced running back like a Quinchon or a Kyron. I know we have Cleveland defense. We can always go down if we need to. Probably just because I like the 3 o'clock games more. Let's say we go Kyron. Let's go back down to Arizona defense. That's enough for Juwan Jennings as a correlated piece of the Kyron stuff. So you bring back with the ultimate bring back of JSN. You've got Kyle Manungai. Say you don't want to get too crazy, and because you're already different enough doing a double of Arizona, put in TreVeyon Henderson again. I don't care. I don't think anybody else does either. So you got 200 remainder. The ultimate bring back projecting awesome today in JSN. I will say his worst game of the year statistically was against the very Arizona Cardinals, and that I think if I remember correctly, was without Will Johnson. It was just he had no targets, crazy game. Still a solid outing, but that 13-point game is not going to do enough for you at $8,600. But say you wanted to go in a different direction, because actually there's no Detroit in this line, which is kind of scary. A little bit, but it's not like that's the craziest thing to just one of your many lines to not have a Detroit player. But say you want to force one in. Very simple. Bang. You go Amon-Ra instead of JSN. Instead of TreVeyon, you go Kenneth Walker. And then Browns defense, which is probably my favorite. It price didn't matter today. And then last guy, and you can either go Quinchon Judkins for correlation, or you can go Kyron as a standalone play, or not a standalone play, but correlation with Juwan. So which correlation do you want, basically, is how this line would approach. And then if you didn't want to do that and you wanted to go, let's say we went double tight end and have a little bit more fun with that, you go George Kittle, and then that's enough for Nico Collins. Because I still like some Nico. And Nico is 3% owned today. Once again, against his best game or best matchup of the season so far, and his best production, he always kills Jacksonville. And I don't think it matters that Davis Mills is in. Season low price, season best matchup, and no ownership. So that's the trifecta of ways to get different and have fun. In a game where Texans basically need to win this game. If they lose, they're, I think, 3-6. Colts are 7-2, could be 8-2, depending on the result with this Thursday game, this Sunday morning game. And then Jacksonville, in turn, would not only sweep them, but they would be 6-3. So that's basically you're 4 games out with about 8 weeks left. Not a good combination. So I think Houston is a true pick 'em. I'm picking them with somewhat confidence today. If Jacksonville sweeps them, then it is what it is. I'm wrong. But I think that's pretty fun. I think the easy ways that you got different in this line, even though there's zero remainder, you went double tight end. You went with Kenneth Walker, who's not pulling ownership. Right now, he is, let's see, he's not projecting well, but he's 3% owned, season low price, and had 110 yards the last time he played Arizona. They're at home, coming off a game where he had the most snaps of the season and outsnapped Charbonnet for the first time. You also got Nico sub 3%. You're double tight end, like I mentioned. That's just awesome, you know. Let's give Dusty a look with Michael Wilson. We'll take out Nico. Let's put Jason back in because I bet you he'll prefer him because that is his receiver on his fantasy squad. I know that very much. We'll put in Michael Wilson down at 39, I think was his price. What was his price? 33. Oh, interesting. Let me look at his snaps real quick. 72% snaps. So he's been at least 70% snaps every week since week 3. $3,300. 9 fantasy points last game. 3 straight weeks, at least 7. All 3 were a sample with Jacoby Brissett in the fold. Has not scored a touchdown with him, but at least his floor has been up there. He had no games with Kyler Murray at least 20 yards, let alone 40. Each of the last 3 games, at least 40. So maybe I'm overlooking him a little bit today. But either way, that opens up $2,000 for you. You can do a lot of fun things with that. Let's say if you want a mid price running back, 74. That's enough for Emeka Buka. Oh, actually, you don't want Marvin Harrison in there. I know that. I like Arizona doubles. I will not do an Arizona triple. That's a little too much for me. So, but you got JSN. Let's try to find a Detroit guy. So I know you mentioned JMO earlier, so let's throw in JMO and see what that opens up for you. 78. I want him at receiver, not flex. Jameson Williams. That is 7,800 left. I don't think that opens up anything other than James Cook, which is a fine flex. Or you can go with Devontae. The other thing is you can go double tight end. You go back to Sam Laporta, save $500. That is almost enough for Amon-Ra. Or you can try to go up from Trayvon at running back. Let's try to go up to James Cook. You got $6,400 per. If you want an easy correlation, Jalen Waddle, haven't mentioned him a ton, but again, solid spot and bring back as long as the game is close. So that's fun. What do you think of that, Dusty? And then if you didn't want that, you could also go back down to Arizona defense. Go up to Sam Laporta. That's enough for Jameson. And leave salary on the table for what it's worth. So nobody will have this line if you went this. Or the other thing is, let's not get the Buffalo side of things. M likes that build. Let's try to go up to, let's see, mid-priced, 62 per, last 2 in. You can go with, let's see, Debo. Mid-price guy, $6,800 remainder. Doesn't really afford you what you want. There's still no Detroit players in there, but Nico probably would be the best of the available for me. Let's try to fit some Detroit in there. So maybe it's Jahmyr Gibbs. $5,400 per. That's Kenneth Walker with 2 Seattle. So double stack, double bring back. Exclamation point. Wan'Dale Robinson as a standalone. Or I don't really love going up at running back today. I really don't. Quinshon Judkins. Almost have enough for Emeka. Go back down to Travion. 78. This is where we were earlier. Probably the easiest way to do that is go back up to Cleveland defense and then Emeka Buka as a standalone flex. Obviously, I would put one of these receivers because they're all 3 o'clock games just for it's always a good practice. 3 o'clock game. Make sure that they're in your flex if possible. Unless you go 3 12 o'clock running backs or all 12 o'clock receivers or something like that. Make sure that you always have a 3 o'clock player in your flex just in case you want to be different or whatever. But this is fun as well. It's more balanced, but you got the ultimate bring back. You got the double stack without Marvin. So you're even more different in this build. You got running backs that will pull ownership, but there's plenty of ways you went different in this line. And if you didn't want Emeka, you could do last thing. Let's say instead of going McBride, we went one of these tight ends, right? And then we went Marvin Harrison So we went double receiver for. It's much scarier because look, McBride legitimately has a great rapport with Brissett, but I'm just throwing looks out there. That's exactly enough for Christian McCaffrey instead of Travion. So you got the single correlation with Debo, Laporta, double stack, still the ultimate bring back, and you fit McCaffrey somehow with the great defense. So that's fun. Um, yeah. All right. 1052. Let's do another build. What do you want to do with your main M? Tell me your quarterback you want to build with. Let's see. Did a Lamar, did I do a golf bid? I don't think I did a golf build on the main yet. I may have. Either way, I want to do it one more time. All right, put Dowdle back in there. Let's do Cleveland Browns. Let's do once again everybody that plays Jared Goff, which he's not crazy owned, but they're going to most of the time they're going to be doing doubles with Laporta and Amon-Ra. So the way to get different, you go triple or you include running backs. I think with this specific one, let's get away from Sam Laporta and we'll do George Kittle. Let's put back in Amon-Ra and we'll do Jameson Williams with the secondary. So $5,700 per. You've got different ways you can go about this. So I think an easy way, you go Kenneth Walker. You got Trey McBride as a flex. I think he's a very viable flex. And then $5,800, that was almost enough for Zay Flowers. If you didn't like Zay, you can go down to Arizona. That's enough for Jalen Waddle. Almost enough for Ibuka or Nico. Let's try to see if we can get there. Yeah, if you went to Mecca, you can go down to Marvin Harrison as the last guy in, as a single standalone play, correlated with Kendall Walker. I think the two most popular of that game is going to be JSN, Trey McBride. So you're playing like people with less popularity, but ultimate opportunity. I'm going to be overweight to Marvin. I'm going to be overweight to Kendall Walker. It's pretty easy to do both. But yeah, that's a way to do it. Didn't do a bring back though. That's interesting. Let's say you want to force one in. Debo is probably the only guy I really am interested in with Washington today. I would be more interested with Ertz if he wasn't basically the same price as Kittle and Laporta. But you got those two. Let's say instead of Jameson, you went back to Debo and just let's do a standard and we'll find ways to get different. Let's go with Debo here. You've got, let's do double tight end. I don't care. You've got Sam Laporta. $5,700. That's exactly enough for Travion. So you got double stack, bring back. You've got double tight end. You've got standalone play. Or I'm sorry, no, correlated play. Travion Henderson and Emeka Ibuka. The standalone play is Rico Dowdle, who's been in basically every line I've built. And in Arizona defense, nobody's playing Arizona's defense, but you're just hoping for 5 points so you can afford everything else. So, yeah, I think that'll be it for that. Hear me out, Bryce Young. Interesting. The thing that's scary is that Tet hurt his hammy on Friday. And I don't know what to do with that information because he hasn't been doing well anyways. And then there's also win today. But I'll play along. Let's do the puke stack. This is puke. And if we're doing a puke stack, we're going to be very different because we're not going to play Rico Dowdle in this line. We're going to find ways to get different. Let's throw in Quinshawn for now and see what happens. We'll correlate that with Cleveland defense. And so Carolina's guys, you've got, let me pull up their snap counts because last 2 weeks ago was their first game with Coker and the other three with legitimate snap share. So last 2 weeks, you've got Tetaroa being about 90% of the snaps, Leggett being about Leggett was pretty skewed. So he had 89% one game, he had 55% the other game. Coker right in the middle at 66% in both games. So he's pretty consistent. I was starting to play a lot of Coker. And then thinking that Ted was going to miss and he was probably going to be a core cheat play. But now he's just not really where I was going about things. But Coker, if I'm playing Carolina and you're twisting my arm, I think I got to put him in. And then can you play Tet with the risk of the hammy? Like who else are you gonna play? I'm not gonna like y'all would laugh at me if I tried to do a double stack of Leggett and Coker. So it's probably gonna have to be that. I don't know how Jatavion's been doing. He hasn't really done ton since returning from his ankle injury. Him and Tommy have just been evenly split at tight end reps, and they're both sub 3K, and they're not doing anything with it. So I think basically the way to double Carolina is just you either do this two combo or you just say screw it, pick one receiver and Rico Dowdle, eat the chalk there, and you're different enough because you're playing double Carolina. I don't care what you say. I will not play the New Orleans side of that game. The one news that I think we were waiting on, I don't know if it's official about Alvin being out or in. Let's see. Alvin. You've got Alvin's active today. So $5,400. He has not scored more than 14 points this season. And so somehow at $5,400, he's too expensive. Yeah, and it's Olave's 6'2". Oh, that's disgusting. And then Rashid Shaheed, who's going to fill that void? Oh, that's the Giants. New Orleans. So you got Brandon Cooks, had a bunch of snaps last game. He played each of the last 4 games, has played at least 55% of the snaps, has not done a ton with it, has not scored a touchdown, but 3,400. You would assume because Rashid Shaheed has been the second highest snapping receiver this year, he could get a role. I remember some coach speak that Kellen Moore said that he's going to try to have Devon Vele be more involved. So Vele is 33. Ugh. All right, let's get pukey. I don't care. Who cares? Last line of the day. Whatever. $7,600 per. And obviously, there's no tight ends that are that expensive. So you got $8,400 remainder the rest of the way. And that's enough for, let's say, Gibbs and Puka. Gibbs and JSN. I don't know who you prefer. I know you're a Puka stan, but he's also banged up again. Hurt his ribs last week. He should be good, but it's just how many catches can he have before he bangs himself up again? Or you can go JSN, feel a little safer doing that. So you double punt it at receiver in order to get 2 highly priced guys. The problem is I'd rather have the more expensive receivers than the more expensive running backs today. And if that's the case, what if I did this and we just said, hey, Tet might get hurt or might be limited. And you just say eat the Rico chalk and then you're different because you're also putting in Coker and Young. Doesn't make a lot of sense, right? But who cares, right? Let's take out McBride. No, I don't want to do that. JSN. Oh, that's what you do. You go down at defense to Arizona, and that's enough for Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I'd rather do double expensive receiver than one expensive and then one expensive running back. Unless you're going like the James Cook route. I know I haven't put him in a ton. That's kind of scary. But I'd rather do these 2 guys than those 2 guys. If that makes any sense. But you double stack. You bring back with Devon Vele. Nobody will have that line. And then you find a way to have McBride, the most expensive tight end, JSN, and Amon-Ra. and then still enough for Quinshon Judkins. Say you didn't want to do that and you wanted to still have some value here, put in Henderson. That's enough for Christian McCaffrey. Or you just go back up at defense because I feel much better about Cleveland's defense. And you go that. That's cool. I mean, it's the core guys. You just are pretty gross at your double stack. But say Bryce Young rushes for a touchdown, Coker gets 4 for 50, pays off his price tag, and then Rico Dowdle has his 25 opportunities again in a great matchup. They scored 21 points, but those two are involved on all three. And then optimistically, Coker gets the floor of 8 and then possibly is involved on one of those touchdowns, and nobody would have Coker. So after you twisted my arm, that's what I got for you, M. Blurpy, what is up, my friend? My lineup this week, PPR, Herbert, Rico, Judkins, Diggs, Odunze, McBride, flex is Debo, Panthers on defense. You got Caleb, Henderson, Metcalf, and Seattle D on the bench. Any changes? If I'm being honest, I think I'd rather have Henderson over Odunze. I think. And that's me who is starting Odunze in like 5 leagues today. So it's terrifying to say that. But I think I feel better about the floor of Henderson. Odunze back to back to back kind of duds. It's not the best weather today, so down the field won't be there. So I don't know if he's got 100-yard upside. Travion's got, the snap share. I was happy about his 75% snap share last week. Decent matchup again. So I think I'd rather side with that. I have a lot of Henderson in redraft and I have Odunze, but if I had to pick one or the other, I think I'm going to lean with Henderson in that spot. So moving Debo to receiver, Henderson at flex. That's I think what I lean today. Metcalf is going to be colder weather. It's okay matchup against the Chargers. Oh, wrong game. They just played Green Bay. They're playing the Chargers. It's an okay matchup. I'd probably keep him on the bench. I'd side with Herbert over Caleb today. Seattle D against Arizona or Carolina versus New Orleans. I think I'd go with Carolina against Shuck instead of against Brissett, who's lighting it up. And we're going to play a lot of Arizona. So that's against my correlation with that. So hopefully my long-winded answer helps you out. And I hope that Henderson works out for both of us today in that regard. But I'm sorry if Odunze happens to catch 2 touchdowns, but I think that's the only way that he really goes about wildly outscoring Travion Henderson today. I think that's his only path. Before we get out of here, quick look. I just wanted to do a quick glance at the pricing of primetime. I haven't even looked, so this is my first time even reacting to it, but a couple of interesting games, Green Bay, Philly, and Chargers and Steelers. Steelers on the road, but basically it will be a home game because there's going to be a lot of Steeler fans there. Going to do a speed build. I'm picking Philly outright. That was one of my most confident bets of the week, and it is now a true pick 'em after they were like 2-point dogs coming off their bye. And then we try to figure out what to do at running back. Is pretty gross. Running back's disgusting. I will say that. Gainwell, 4,300. It's enticing because he's a PPR friendly back. Jalen Warren, 5,800. Might click his name. Kamani Vidal, not a good matchup. I don't know what happened in a chalky matchup last week, but he did not work out and made me very, very sad. So it's probably the direction of going Jalen Warren, picking one of these two. I don't know. Barkley finally had a breakout game last before the bye against the Giants in his second opportunity, 174 yards, two touchdowns, all purpose. And then you got Jacobs, who has not clipped 100 yards. He scores touchdowns. He's got 10 on the year. He's got 8 of those in the last 5 games. So that's, welcoming sight. They're at home. I guess I'd lean Jacobs. I don't feel confident one way or the other, though. Gadsden is a revelation. 4 straight games, at least 68 yards, 2 touchdowns, awesome production. Even in games that are blowouts, he's finding ways to get there. So he's the highest priced tight end for a reason. Goddard apparently is just one of the best red zone threats in football. 7 touchdowns so far this season. with less than 300 total yards. That's insane. But $4,700 feels rich. Luke Musgrave, his first game without um, Tucker Kraft, who's out for the season, in short-term relief because he left this game 3 for 34, $3,500 price tag. Kind of tough. Pittsburgh tight ends pissed me off. So it's probably just that. And as much as I love doing double tight end, I don't think I'll do that on this slate. I think the big question will be, how do you approach the Charger receivers? So you've got Love, who's got a reasonable price point at 58. You've got Herbert, 66. Good matchup though. But how do you do it? I don't know. If I have a confident lean, Devontae is really kind of coming on. Last 2 games, 3 of the last 4 with at least 80 yards. This last game sample was without AJ Brown, who will be back. I think one or the other is in a good spot. And then McConkey at least is starting to get the consistent targets. He's had at least 7 targets in all but 2 games this year, and now is starting to score touchdowns, 3 in the last 5. I thought Quentin Johnston was there to stay. He's basically become touchdown or bust since his week 4 performance where he had 13 targets. Crazy target volume. We thought that was there to stay. He hasn't had more than 6 since, but he scored 3 touchdowns in 5 games. But he's also got 0 for 0 for 0. That was our takedown game where we faded him and we won with the other 2. But he's the lowest and cheapest of the bunch. Close your eyes and pick 2. Keenan Allen was consistent, back-to-back games under 50 yards. But you're also got Gaston in there. I think I'd still want a triple stack if I'm going with the Chargers. So I think the way to go about it is you pick 2 of those. You go with a Philly receiver, and you got 4,200. Last guy in, who is that? Calvin Austin. Christian Watson. Bring up Green Bay snap counts. Christian Watson returned 2 weeks ago, had a really solid outing, 4 for 85. Last week followed that up, 66% of the snaps. And we are waiting on that Q tag for Matthew Golden. I don't know if he returned to practice on Saturday. I actually wasn't paying attention. Romeo Dobbs is going to be available. Christian Watson will be available. But you got Wicks, Golden, all questionable, and Tucker Kraft is now out. So I think the way to do it is trying to squeeze in a Green Bay receiver instead of Pittsburgh. So let's say Christian Watson, last guy in. And I don't mind getting to some Romeo Dobbs, though. Romeo is 49. He was the one that stood out to me on the Sunday-Monday or Thursday-Monday contest. 10 targets last week, 7 for 91. That was the best game of the season for him. Outside of a 3-touchdown effort, which kind of an anomaly. I guess it's not because I remember him killing Dallas in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Still sad about that game. But picking 1 or 2 Green Bay receivers, picking your Philly stand, triple stacking the Chargers, bringing back with Jaylen Warren is the direction I go. And then you also got to make the decision of Jacobs versus Saquon. So pricing isn't like great, but you can kind of afford whatever you want. It's just, I think this could be a lower money spot. And so you get you're confident as long as Jalen Hurts doesn't rush for 2 touchdowns. But at the same time, he's got 7 passing touchdowns the last 2 games. Herbert has also had awesome performances in recent games as well. Has had 9 touchdowns in the last 3 games. So I think it's picking one of those 2 guys, and then you mix and match or try to find your route to go about going about those games. But I'll send my final build with that one. But yeah, that is all I got for you guys. We appreciate you guys tuning in. It has been a while since we've streamed. A couple of hiccups over the last couple of weeks, but we're back up and running. We are in November. Cold weather football today. Hopefully you'll see some sleet and snow. We'll see though. But we're going to be doing content throughout the rest of the football season. Emory is back in the fold, so I think they're going to be recording their college football recap today. And then we're going to be reacting to, those kinds of things. He's got his defensive rankings coming out. I think after this week, we're going to be doing the power rankings for football or for the NFL. So I'll do a recap of that, our monthly recap this week. So a lot of fun things to tune into. And then, of course, our weekly first looks for Showdown and Main. So can't thank you guys enough for tuning in. If you did, love you guys. Please like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Join that community, join the Discord. Send my final looks in a second. And with that said, guys, I will see y'all on the next one.